it the way you want. Oh, there it is.
We back up. Sorry, guys.
We had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, couple
camera
of hands. Yeah, our cameraman, like, he wasn't recording right. That's what we're gonna go with, right?
Okay.
Hey.
Hi.
Good evening. Welcome to the couch. I'm your host, Damion. And guess what I have?
Look who's
today?
back!
Oh my goodness!
Exciting! I missed everybody.
Yes,
I missed the conversation.
Yes. Grown folk conversation.
I missed the conversation on the couch, but I did tune in. I saw it. I saw the taping. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good conversation that I wish I could have been a part of. But
yeah.
It's good to have time away, right?
A little something. I need a vacay too.
It's good to have time away. Oh,
you
she
know.
said, y'all got to get it together now. Yeah, we getting it together now.
Yeah, we good. We got it. We got
Hey,
it.
everybody.
Cameraman was acting up.
I feel like I've been just
gone for a while.
Yeah, I feel like I've been gone for a long time.
Hey, you know, the couch was kind of empty for a while. You know.
Was it really, David?
Yeah, it was empty. And then
Did you miss the back and forth?
Then you got sick, and don't mind my voice, y'all. Like I'm trying to get over sinus infection and all that stuff. So
he don't feel well.
But I still try to grind it out just a little bit. But you know, I listen to my body.
You know, he still has something to say. So
my body told me that I needed to come on the couch.
Really?
So
that's how I was feeling. I rushed over here in 40 minutes of traffic. Yeah. Oh, I missed you too. Oh, that's so nice. Those loyal viewers.
Kiba, you don't know what you just did.
Okay, why you have to call her out?
You don't know what you just did.
Anyway.
Everybody can see the comment. But anyway, again, welcome to the couch. We here. We had an actual viewer that was trying to troll us last week.
Really?
Saying it's called the couch, but where's the couch?
Okay, because we evolved.
Yeah.
Did you explain?
It's a figurative thing. Yeah, we explained all that. We
okay.
We good over here. But
we good.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We got an awesome show today.
Sure.
Definitely is. And this particular topic has always been kind of like a ongoing battle within the mental health community, and that's why I called it the battle within. Therapy versus medication. You know, you have pros and cons on both ends, and today we're going to kind of discuss, you know, pros and cons on both individually, as well as, you know, what signs to look for, what steps you need to take to, I guess, to evolve into a person or a patient that says, okay, I possibly need some medications or some additional assistance to help manage my mental health problems. So we're here to kind of clarify some of those things. Hey, Lakeisha.
Frickin' frat.
Freaking frat. Wow.
We are
that's
not.
Funny.
I love it, though. I'll embrace that.
Yeah.
So, can we get started with our conversation? Because, you know, I had specific things that I wanted to touch on and kind of questions I wanted to get into with this. So we want to touch on medication in kids and adults as far as mental health, right? I would like to know, as a therapist, what are the diagnoses that you normally and most consistently and predominantly see in children that requires their parents to put them on medication? What are you seeing? What are the diagnoses that you see that are requiring the kids you see to be put on medication?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the severity of the diagnosis. There's definitely different levels to it. I guess we won't go all the way in depth on that unless we have time, since like I'm a time manager person back today. But that's another story. But again, it's just different levels. But for the most part, the people that I see as far as children and adolescents is more so ADHD, depression, or some type of mood disorder, whether that's disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, which I call like a kid's bipolar, or anxiety. Not so much, I think, the anxiety, but I mean, I have my own biases, and we're going to get into that because I'm definitely going to play devil.
Sure we are.
I'm going to play devil's advocate today. That's just what I do. That's me. She's the more by the book, and I'm a little bit.
Am I by the book?
Yes, you are.
Okay, well, we're going to get into it. Let's get into it. Okay, we're going to get into it.
So does that answer your question? Mostly ADHD, a little bit of ODD, not as much in kids. As far as specific diagnoses that I've run across over the years as being a therapist and being in the mental health field. So
okay. All right, so I would also say ADHD in kids and ODD. I guess working at the clinical day treatment program. Clinical day treatment, where I currently work full-time, is a program for kids who are psychiatrically beyond just a normal school setting.
Right.
They need way more attention. They have mental health diagnoses, which require consistent clinical attention daily. So, and throughout the day. So in that setting, a lot of ODD. I have seen some conduct disorder as a therapist, some conduct disorder, and mostly ADHD.
And I guess once I really dove into this profession and actually tried to, I guess, making my expertise as far as diagnosing and treating, a lot of kids are being misdiagnosed. I think we kind of touched on that weeks ago. But that influences a lot of parents in regards to whether they decide to put their child on medication. If I told you that, your child is dealing with trauma, dealing from, witnessing sexual abuse or emotional abuse, but on the surface they're just acting out or, have some difficulty focusing in class and their academic performance isn't as good, and they're constantly always on the go, you automatically assume ADHD. And the first thing the parent want to say is, let's put them on medication.
Okay, so you're already getting into it, so we'll just stay into it. We'll just stay into it right now. All right, so you're saying and making it very clear that ADHD is often misdiagnosed in kids.
Very much so.
And
my opinion.
Well, I'm going to speak for both of us. So we believe that ADHD is often misdiagnosed.
Right.
And that there are other diagnoses, if you would just uncover more of what is happening and not just spend an hour and making your decision based on the parent saying he's getting out of his seat and he doesn't eat his complete dinner, or he talks out of turn or he's not listening. There's more to it than that. And oftentimes I also find that there are historical traumas that have occurred that leads a child to that type of behavior. And it's not just as simple as having ADHD, giving them medication, and then they can focus.
Exactly.
There's way more that needs to be discovered. So with that, let's just ask the question so that we can also provide an answer for the individuals watching. At what point should a parent start looking to have their child assessed for medication? In your opinion?
From my and before I forget, let's address this question right here from Lasana. She said, with oppositional defiant disorder, isn't that usually just considered rebellious behavior, or is it psychotic as well until there's an actual diagnosis?
Counselor?
Oppositional defiant disorder is more so of a behavior that they exhibit. Now that could just be surface. That could mean that they fight all the time, they lash out, they're angry.
It depends on the kid.
Others.
It depends on the kid.
I've never diagnosed a kid that exhibited psychotic behavior.
No. I'm backing you up, dear. I'm saying it depends on the kid. I'm just piggybacking off you. And the other part of what I was going to add basically is that what I see is that some kids have a real impulse control disorder. And that's real. Impulse control issues can lead to oppositional defiance. And so that's when you start to look at something else, not just behavior. Because if we say behavioral, that often leads us to believe the child can control it ultimately if they choose. Right?
And to add on to that, what I would say is that particular diagnosis, especially with children, it's environmental. So what they see and what they're around, most of the time, that's what they're going to mimic. So if they're out of control in the classroom and the teacher is like, well, he won't sit down, Johnny won't sit down, he's always hitting people, things like that, being disruptive, wonder where he gets it from, that type of thing. So it's more environmental than it is biological or physiological type of thing.
Honestly, since I told you this was just going to take us where we needed to go. So I have feelings and thoughts and professional opinions about sticking 17 kids under the age of 7 in a classroom, expecting them all to focus, stay in their seats, pay attention, listen, and follow directions.
Not realistic.
I don't believe it's realistic, number one.
Right.
Number two, let's be clear. Most of you teachers are not trained in mental health diagnosis, disorders, and interventions to use with mental health diagnosis. Whether that's ADD, ADHD, bipolar disorder, depression, any of that, conduct disorder, any of that. So most of them, actually probably maybe 75, 80% of them are not trained in it. I'm just going to be generous with those numbers.
Yes,
okay?
very generous.
So we've got teachers who are saying such and such is not listening, such and such is not paying attention. But then we've got to get into the statistics of the fact that African American boys are more likely to be diagnosed with it. Okay? And a lot of these conversations start in school.
Yes, and that's another topic that we're definitely going to be discussing as far as cultural competency within mental health field as well as the population, because if I don't understand you, if I don't come from your background and I do something that's, out of the norm
Different,
for you
yeah.
or different, the way that I respond or behave, then you may say, okay, well, it's outside of the norm.
But
okay,
statistically,
but whose norm?
Statistically, we carry it more. African American boys are more likely to be hyper.
Right.
That's just what it is. I mean, look it up. So I'm not trying to get us completely off track and then on to cultural differences, but what I am stating is that when we start this in the classroom and then the teacher brings it to the parent-teacher conference to the parent saying, oh my gosh, my child's behavior is interfering with school, then we have the preliminary diagnosis. And then we get a full diagnosis somewhere in there. And then the parent at some point tries to decide, does my kid need to be on medication or not? So what would you tell a parent who comes to you basically stating, my child is disruptive in school.
Right.
It's been happening, 6 months? Let's say 6 months. This is a scenario. My child is in school. They're disruptive. This has been going on 6 months. The school is telling me that something has to give here, and I don't know what to do. What would you say first? Tell her to do what?
My first thing is to, like we always say, get an assessment done to verify that particular diagnosis or the symptoms. And then within that assessment, for me, my first line of defense is therapy. Whether that's individual, family, group, parenting skill development to deal with these particular behaviors, so on and so forth. My last resort, my last recommendation would be medication, because you don't know what you're treating. You're treating, the behavior and not the actual cause or the trigger of the behavior. And that's my issue. Like, we're trying to cure something that we don't know anything about. So if you go straight to the doctor, you just tell them, okay, I'm doing XYZ, whether that's a physical doctor or a psychiatrist or whatever. If you tell the doctor, I have this, this, and this. If I have a stuffy nose or my throat, is feeling some type of way, or my voice is cracky right now, it could be a million and one things that could cause that to happen. But because you don't get all the information that's needed, misappropriation of diagnosis will happen.
Okay, so
but my first step is definitely therapy.
Okay, I agree. So I don't feel the need to give my own explanation. I'm in agreement with what you said, so we can move forward.
Yes.
The question is, how early is too early to diagnose a child with a mental health disorder? I have my opinions based on what I've seen. I'm pretty sure we're in the same realm with this.
Give me yours.
Well, mine is, the earliest, let me just state the earliest I feel comfortable diagnosing a child with ADD or ADHD, let's just say that, is 5 years old. I would never, I wouldn't go below that. I don't think you know enough, you've seen enough, and there's enough maturity level there with a 4-year-old and below in order to tell what's really happening. You can't even get real language from an under 5-year-old that I feel comfortable with. So based on my professional experience and everyone I've served, the young to geriatrics, I would say 5 is the youngest I'd feel comfortable even assessing. Yeah.
I generally, if I do get a referral for a child that's maybe like 4, I would try to give that parent, some tools, some things that she can utilize. Also try just child and family development, and maybe something that's just off and is not a mental health condition. So I would definitely agree as far as giving it time to kind of progress and solidify those particular symptoms and behaviors that they're showing. So 5, just because Johnny is 3 years old and he's bouncing everywhere. Maybe, you know,
Control
we gonna get into that a little bit later.
Set some boundaries. Well, let's just say this. Let's throw it out there, okay? In case you're watching and your child is under 5 years old, your child is running amok. They're not listening. They can't sit down and eat dinner. They're sitting on their foot because they're antsy about getting up. Yeah. You need to set boundaries. I would use a timer. This is just something I want to throw out there because it's helpful. I would get an oven timer from Walmart, those $2 timers or whatnot, and start timing your kid during activities and things that you want them to complete in a certain short period of time. Do not give your 3-year-old a 30-minute time to complete something. Give them a 5 to 10 minute interval so they can start learning the concept of time and then become responsible for when they're done. You know, when the time's up, they may even become stimulated and excited about keeping their own time. Exactly. And that's something I use for kids that don't even have attention deficits. Right. It's a good, helpful way to help kids retain attention. Attention
builds habit. Habit builds, you know, character, so on and so forth. So I would definitely agree with that as far as just different things that you would normally do. Because, let me tell you something. Like, most parents, when a kid is like 1 or 2 and they start talking back, they say little smart little things that you can barely understand, but you know exactly what they're saying.
That's because you taught them.
And you think it's funny
because they learn from you.
It's cute and all this good stuff. It's going to continue. If you don't check it early, it's going to continue. They get 3, 4, 5 on up. They feel like they can just talk to mommy any type of way or daddy any type of way and not get punched in the chest. Well, that's just for the boys. That's just. I'm not condoning violence.
We don't condone violence on this show.
Right.
There's a little, if we had this little thing to float on the bottom.
The views expressed on the couch are
that of Damion Harmon and Damion Harmon alone. Okay. So the question is, if a child does not become diagnosed early on, how might this affect them later in life? I mean, I think there's a basic general answer to that. I don't think there's anything. I mean, we can't really say how someone's going to be affected by something later. It depends on what diagnosis is missed. Then that's really getting into heavier conversation. If we're just talking about ADD or ADHD, that's going to become apparent at some point, a couple years, if not a year down the line, months.
It is.
It's going to become apparent. But when we get into heavier diagnosis, you know, I saw somebody mention schizophrenia somewhere on this feed, and I don't know about you, Damion, but just from my studies alone and what I've seen, I've only started seeing that in age 9 anyway. I don't see that under age 9. A lot of times the onset is not even till adolescent.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely, just like with personality disorders, I try to stay away from until I know for sure it is what it is. But for children with potential diagnosis of some type of psychosis or schizophrenia or whatever the case may be, we have to verify a lot of different things before I get to that point. They have to get like a full scale, you know, psychological evaluation, all those things before that happens. There's usually, you know, levels and steps that you would take before that happens. And it's definitely less than 1%. I would even say 0.1% of the kids actually exhibit symptoms similar to schizophrenia earlier on. Now, the earliest onset I've seen of schizophrenia within a child was, you know, preteen, like teenager.
Okay, I've seen 9, and I want to talk about this in terms of medication, since that's the basis of this segment. And this is all tied in, everybody.
Yes,
so
it is.
What we are saying is, all right, when we get into the heavier diagnosis, so now we're off behavioral, right? So basically the synopsis of what we just told you about ADD and ADHD is seek an assessment. Seek a clinical assessment first. If the school is calling you repeatedly, you're missing work because you got to handle your kid's behavior, you need a clinical assessment done. Find out who takes your child's insurance. Google it. Actually, you can go to Psychology Today if you need to. Or you can try to find a behavioral health company in your area and find out what insurances they take, and they'll do a clinical assessment. And after the clinical assessment, you get your child engaged in therapy. And I would say about, this is what I'm going to say, 60 to 90 days of therapy, the therapist will have a very good idea and recommendation for you, whether you need medication management evaluation or not.
And
30 to 60.
And that's usually the time frame. Like, I generally get it in that assessment. Okay, what do you recommend? If they're on the fence, possibly, I'm going to say no. I'm not even going to give them that option at that particular point. I mean, and it's just a recommendation. Parents can do what they want to do.
Right, of course.
But professionally, clinically, I would definitely tell them my thought process, and not necessarily just putting up my bias there, because I do have a bias, and I don't even see it as a bias. I just want to make sure that people are going through the appropriate checklist.
The appropriate checklist, the process.
The process before you
Number one is not medication. Step one is not medication.
Right,
Step one is assessment. So if you need to, write it down. Step one is a clinical assessment. Step two is therapy. And step three, with a question mark, is medication. Okay? Let's just say that to be safe. So I want to talk about schizophrenia. I have seen it in a 9-year-old. And let's talk about, since everybody's asking about symptoms and onset and how do you know when. What we have to be careful of is when the children start displaying symptoms that we as parents know is a little odd, or it just strikes us as a little off, okay? Let's give an example. I was seeing a 9-year-old who actually was hearing voices. But, you know, in our community, what do we tend to tell our kids? Oh, no, you know, just go do this. You're not doing that. No, that didn't happen. And you're just playing.
Or, oh, my bad. That was from last week. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
What? Okay. So, all right. Oh, you knocked me off with that. I'm trying to clean it up for us. I don't have the broom.
Dr. Harris, if you're watching, or you watching this later, it was no disrespect to you at all. You know how we go. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is sometimes we brush under the rug the things that our children are doing and saying that strike us as bizarre. What? Sometimes we're in denial. Sometimes it's hard to accept. And sometimes we would just rather believe it's no big deal.
Right.
However, this child I was seeing had been hearing voices over the series of a few years.
Yeah.
And her parent admitted, hey, I brushed this off. You know, I told her, no, you're not. And I've started seeing that in more kids, not necessarily with schizophrenia, but the parents would minimize the symptoms that we would actually recommend medication eval for, right? So number one, you want to listen to your kids. I mean, we talked about this in the beginning in one of our first segments about communication. Communicate with your kids, pay attention to what they do, and just kind of document those things. Why don't you keep a little list? These are the things that Sarah does that is not age appropriate, or the things that she does that's socially inappropriate.
Right.
You start to make a list. Then you bring that to the therapist who conducts the clinical assessment, and then you'll know where to start.
Right.
Because I feel like if these symptoms are paid attention to and the assessment is made early enough, within a couple months, we'll know which kids need the medication management appointments and which just do well with therapy. So that's just my spill on that. I do see schizophrenia in childhood. I see it more in other races. I don't see it predominantly in African American because we don't really report a lot of that stuff either.
Yeah.
So honestly.
So I definitely want to address this question that Adaria posted. She said, does mental health ever get cured or better over time when compliant with meds?
I'll let you answer first, and then I'll.
Yes.
Okay. It depends.
It depends. It's just like any other thing that's health related. You know, like if I have diabetes, you know, I can cure diabetes, you know, by changing my lifestyle habits. Same thing with mental health. You know, you change the way you think. You know, and that could be with therapy, that could be in addition with medication, but who wants to stay on medication for the rest of their lives? And it also depends on the diagnosis and the symptoms. Like we were talking about schizophrenia, that's one that takes a little bit more therapy, long term, I would say, definitely. Medications, because a lot of the clients that I've seen that's been diagnosed with schizophrenia, they take heavy dosages.
Of which medications?
It could be not Adderall.
Invega, Abilify.
Invega.
Okay.
Where they give them a shot, like a once a month shot, and it stays in their system throughout their entire month.
I mostly see that in adults.
Anything that's like going to stay in my body for a month.
Oh yeah.
Like that's not good.
Heavy. It's heavy.
Like it's really heavy. but anything to reduce those psychotic episodes that they may exhibit due to that particular diagnosis. So it really depends on the diagnosis. You know, children that have been appropriately diagnosed with ADHD and received the treatment that they needed often are able to not necessarily cure, but it's definitely much better, and it's better. It can be managed a whole lot better.
I would say managed.
Your thought process. You know, you're still going to think rapidly like this. Your mind's going to always be going, but that doesn't mean your body necessarily has to. So you're kind of teaching yourself different skills in order to manage and improve your focus and sustainability within that diagnosis.
I think you can knock people off with the word cure.
Yeah.
We are not physicians and we are not medical doctors, so I wouldn't use the word cure.
Right.
I always tell my clients when they come in and they have a diagnosis of depression, you know that this is not permanent. This does not have to be permanent.
Right.
This can change for you in 6 months, or this can change for you in 2 years. A lot of people see the diagnosis on the paper. You know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an excellent therapist and you're doing the real work. A lot of people aren't doing that kind of work where they...
Well, it takes the therapist and the actual client.
work together.
Yes, definitely.
So,
I don't want to work harder than the client. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's no problem. So,
see,
what we're saying... It's hot in here. It's a hot box in here. It is hot, despite our back and forth. But basically what I'm saying is that there is no... I would not say there's a cure. So let's get off of saying that there's a cure. Mm-hmm. Are some mental health diagnoses, if not almost all of them, manageable? Yes. They can become manageable, whether that's with therapy or with therapy and the assistance of medication. It's not therapy versus medication with you have to choose between, okay?
Right.
It's therapy or you do therapy plus a little medication.
Right.
Now, do I have clients who take Prozac or Zoloft and then they get off Prozac or Zoloft within 2 years? Yes, because some people need it at some stage in their life where they are not managing and they are panicking at work and they cannot adjust. So they need therapy alongside a low dose of medication to stabilize, right?
Yes.
And some people, when they get to a good enough place in their life and they don't feel fidgety and agitated by every single thing that disrupts themselves, then they are able to come off. So some people come off medication and other people don't.
So it's not that you're being cured, it's just that you don't need you don't need the assistance of medication in order to implement, you know, and utilize coping skills in order to manage those things from happening in the future. So you may not get as many panic attacks for anxiety or anxiety attacks, but you're still going to feel anxious.
You still have anxiety. You're still someone who has anxiety issues. Let's just say that. We all have issues. Yours may be anxiety issues. Somebody else may have emotional stability issues. Somebody may have stress issues. We all have issues. So the point is, you pinpoint what your issue is, and if therapy might be able to help with it, you seek therapy, and maybe your issue will become more manageable. And that's how I look at it.
Okay. Well, my sister, Miss Stephanie Harmon Garrett, asked if...
I love how you announced her whole government name.
Yes. Hey,
Miss
sis.
Stephanie Harmon Garrett.
How are you?
To the front desk.
If ADHD is not diagnosed or there's no therapy, what types of symptoms could you see later?
Well, you can see the same ones later that you see now. Can I list some?
Yeah.
Definitely. I started off, let's talk about kids since, I mean, maybe we'll get into adults in the next segment because this is important since we're dealing with kids now. ADHD in the classroom and at home, this is what it could look like. It would be a child who sits on their foot. A lot of those kids sit on their feet, right? They do not want to have their bottom in a chair. They're uncomfortable with that. They don't want to be locked down in one place. They like to get up frequently. They do not wait their turn. They constantly have to be moving or fidgeting. They talk out loud. They talk out of turn while other people are talking. If that helps, it's just, you cannot focus. So these are also kids that start a worksheet, and some of them, before they even get halfway done, they're fidgeting, doing something else. They're out of their seat. They just cannot stay on task.
Right.
Yes. And they skip over things. And
organizational skills is off. Failure to complete tasks.
Non-completion of tasks.
Yes, absolutely. Like, they can't handle multiple
steps.
Multiple steps and delegations. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that. Okay. So let's just break it down because we know what that language exactly what it means. So let's just say this: kids that have difficulty following multi-step directions. If your child is told, go to your room, grab this off your bed, bring it down here, and then put it over here. There are some kids that only make it up the stairs.
Right.
They make it up the stairs,
stuck.
and then you're like, what happened to that boy? I told him to come down here and do it. Okay,
right.
If you're seeing that every day, at least once a day, when you give more than 3 steps of directives, hey, your kid cannot handle multi-step directives.
Mm-hmm.
You may need to bring it down to 2 steps first.
Yeah.
Then see when they can handle the 3rd and they remember it. Why are you laughing? Are you reading comments?
Yes, because she said, oh my God, Naja has ADHD. Just because she exhibits those symptoms, don't diagnose her with ADHD just because she's struggling.
These are just, I'm answering you guys' questions. These are things that you might see. Now, don't take what I say and run with it and try to give your kid a self-diagnosis in the home.
Right,
I know you out there doing that.
That's not what we're here for, to empower you guys to be therapists within your own
but these are the things that you will see.
Yeah,
you need to have your child diagnosed.
You'll see those things, and if you know a tool, if you know that about your child that she has organizational issues, then change the approach in that.
Right.
You don't need medication for that, and you don't need it to be diagnosed.
Okay, let's talk about this. Someone I know sent me a message months ago, and this is a very smart woman. She cares a lot about her kids. She pays attention.
Right.
And her issue was, my daughter's having issue with this one specific subject. No matter how many times I show her how to do this, she's not getting it. But the girl was doing well in other classes. And it came down to me asking about a list of the symptoms that qualified a child for ADHD.
Right.
And it was very clear that the child had 3/4 of all the symptoms. I mean, they had 75% of all the symptoms of ADHD, even sitting on their foot while eating and never being able to sit through a complete meal for more than 30 minutes without getting up. So this can add up to being different things that maybe you haven't even thought of before.
Right.
But when you start seeing things, you need to document them. If that's the only thing you actually document about your kids, their behavior,
right?
Yeah, I think it's necessary.
And I think what we don't want to miss in this is when you're observing for those particular symptoms. If you know these things, then does it impact their daily life? Is it impacting her academics? Is it impacting relational within the family, or just social issues, or whatever the case may be? Does it impact your life? Like right now, I've been twisting and turning, this entire time. Does that mean I have ADHD because I can't sit still? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it impacting your life?
I mean, I move around a lot. I don't have ADHD, but I'm quite sure I have some type of attention deficit where I do not like to sit for long. Oh yeah, baby. I don't like to sit for long periods of time.
But see, at the same time, because you know yourself and understanding that
it's manageable.
You may have anxiety, and some of those symptoms of ADHD.
I didn't say that about anxiety. I said attention deficit.
Yeah. Like I said.
Why are you trying to out me on the show? I'm just talking about attention.
No, I'm just talking about in general. I didn't
see what he doing.
I didn't say exactly that you had anxiety.
Kind of taunting we talked about.
What I'm saying is that symptoms that may be listed in ADHD may also be listed in another diagnosis.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
And that's the important thing, is to understand the significance of the impact.
Right.
Like if I'm moving around a lot, I may just have a lot on my brain, a lot of racing thoughts. Racing thoughts covers a broad number of diagnoses. Right. So I'm not going to say, oh, you're ADHD because you have a lot of thoughts going on,
So we're responding to individuals saying, oh, you named off a couple things. This is what my kid has. No, there could be other diagnoses that are involved in that. So that's why we said your child needs a clinical assessment.
Right.
I mean, honestly, we have to see the kid.
Yeah.
We have to see the kid and observe physical behavior and being able to talk to the child about what's going on and get from the parents the background. Why are you pointing while I'm talking?
But because I'm actually listening to you, but I also see something that
what do we see? What do we see?
Ray Sean said he's not sure that anyone can sit for 30 minutes. Period.
Thank you.
I totally agree.
Right. So that's why we have to be even more careful. And this goes back to the classroom behaviors that we see, and teachers and how they get parents riled up about your kid can't sit still and all that. We just have to be educated in these things.
Yeah.
I feel like parents go to teacher conferences and teachers assume the parents are dummies. They really do. They assume you parents don't know up from down as far as diagnosis and what's right and what's wrong and what's expected and what's not. And so a lot of times, no, honestly. And this leads to them recommending that your child be assessed within the school, which is a whole nother segment that I want us to have soon, when the school suggests that your child be in some kind of special class, as they call them, or I know, those. Yeah, I can't. I don't want to get into that now, but definitely for sure, you have to be aware. You have to be educated on ADD, what it looks like. You have to be educated on what it takes for any person to sit for 15 minutes and listen and follow directions and hear everything, just to know how to come back.
Right.
And let them know, this is what my child is capable of, and this is when I'll become very concerned.
Like, I'm pretty sure, like, while y'all been watching this live, I'm pretty sure y'all gotten up or y'all done something that distracted you from us. I mean, these wonderful faces, how could you be distracted? But you've been distracted by something, So, I mean,
I'm distracted by this bright light.
You got to be practical. And I totally agree again with what Rayshawn says, that we live in a society where everything moves fast paced. We're impatient. We need that instant gratification on a lot of different things, whether that's social media, whether that's, gimme. I want this now. I see it. I want it. I'm going to go get it. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get it. So especially with kids, if they see something and those boundaries aren't, I guess initiated early on,
sure,
they're going to cross that boundary every time, because it's really not a boundary.
Let's say this. I want to touch on this. This is coming to mind while you're saying if the boundaries aren't there. Parents need to establish in early childhood boundaries in the home, right? Yeah. If you have, the more structure you have in the home and the more boundaries you have in your home, the easier it will be over time to be able to assess what your child's limitations are.
Exactly.
You won't need to wait till they get to school to hear it from a third party. Exactly. You will know. After 2 years in the home of early childhood, hey, my kid's 4 years old, but they've been doing this and having a hard time with doing this the way that I've asked them to for a year. So I already know what my child's issues are. The better you manage the boundaries and behaviors in the home, the more you know about your kid and the less surprised that you'll be.
Exactly. And just like with anything else, the earlier you can catch it, the better. Not saying that you have to diagnose and just take your child in for every little thing, but if you're sitting there and you actually know your child and you notice a shift in their behavior,
right,
and everything else remained the same, whether it's like some type of adjustment, whether you guys moved or divorce or something like that's happened within their life that they've actually been impacted by. If everything else is the same and you just notice that their behavior changed, it's usually something that triggered that.
Okay, I see a comment on the feed, and I don't know exactly what it's pertaining to, but the comment says, "Don't label my child." Now, let me say this. Damion, I need you to speak on this, be real about it.
Yeah.
I'm always real. What I'm going to say,
Definitely.
well, I'm just saying, because I'm about to say something, and some people are not going to like it.
Okay.
Sometimes a diagnosis can be a very good thing, okay? I think in our community, I'm going to say this, in the black community, I find, since this is our platform, we can say what we want. In the black community, I have found more and more that parents are rejecting even having an ADHD diagnosis when it's very clear to me that ADHD is the diagnosis. And I'm talking about after going off the parents' report. I do not just make things up.
Right.
I am never quick to want to diagnose a kid, and I'm never quick to recommend a medication eval, for sure, until the child's been with me at least 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That's when I start to feel comfortable. Or if it's so apparent in 3 weeks, I will sit down with the parent and say, this is why I say this. And I'll go through everything. But let me say this. Some kids need a good old-fashioned diagnosis. They really do, because it's going to help weed out some problem areas. It's going to help them in ways that we have to be ready to receive. So the thing is, if you've noticed the issues and you spoke to a professional, if you think about it, you have an ailment, you go to the doctor. That's for your physical ailment. You're going to go 9 times out of 10 off what the doctor tells you is your diagnosis. You're going to take the paper back to your parent or your spouse and say, this is what I got. You trust that professional diagnosis. This is their area of study. This is our area of study. If there are issues, mental health issues, behavioral, that we see And we go down the list and we tell you, this is what it looks like,
Right.
pending everything you've told me, and this is what I recommend. And at the end of that, you say, don't label my kid. That is up to you.
Right.
Not to take that. But the documentation is there.
Now, at this moment in time, I'm going to be devil's advocate.
Because
I said I wasn't going to be today, but I am. So.
And we're at 6:50. I always tell you what time it is. It's not a major thing.
Really
Somebody has to keep time. Go ahead, Damion.
So you almost made me lose my thought,
but I
didn't lose it. So what I'm saying is that culturally, from a cultural standpoint in regards to mental health, yes, we are often not as quick to go through treatment, do all the necessary things to make sure that we're better mentally. However, when we're talking about school-wise, there's a whole different level, in regards to when you're talking about academics because of from a cultural standpoint, if the teacher, pardon if I have any of my Caucasian friends on here or any other ethnicity, if you're not culturally competent within an African American community, then you're going to say that something is off. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So from a cultural standpoint, medication-wise, therapy-wise, all those things, we're basing it off of a book that we didn't contribute to it. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody had to establish what the norm is for that diagnosis. You know what I'm saying? So if it's outside of what they consider to be normal, then it's something wrong with you, or there's a diagnosis for you. And like we said last week, and we've said it before, everybody could have a diagnosis at any given point in time, any day. But from a cultural standpoint, they're basing it off of what they deem to be normal in their culture.
Okay.
And it's kind of like they feel like we have to, like, I guess, align with that. Mm-hmm. And if we don't, then it's off. And something is wrong. So that's just me being devil's advocate. I would definitely agree that some kids do need medication. Not all of them. There's a small percentage, just like with adults. I mean, we need to be able to process this unresolved trauma, grief, whatever the issues are that are actually triggering these things. We need to be able to dive into that. But medication is kind of like really, like you're taking this, like a whole bunch of different things, and it's really unnecessary.
Well, there is so much more to that we will get into eventually. We cannot cover that today, but there's the fact that I do see parents in the community, in all communities, looking for medication to be the solution because they get paid when their kids are taking medication. They get certain government checks.
They want the quick fix, but they don't.
And they get government checks.
Yeah, you don't want the quick fix.
Let's call it what it is, because I see it all the time.
Oh, I get it.
Oh, so what you're saying is he needs Ritalin. I think that's what you're saying. I mean, I don't want to miss work all the time, so what I'm saying is this is what he needs. Because I can't do this.
Right.
A lot of times that's what it is. They don't have the patience to want to send their kid to therapy, honestly. I see it all over the place.
That 3 to 6 months of...
Okay, since we airing people's stuff out, this is what it is. This is what we see.
Like, that's real. Like,
that's right.
If a parent, especially coming from a lower socioeconomic background, if she's not working it and that's a way for her to get additional income in the home and not necessarily seeing it as support for the child to get him back and forth to therapy, all these different things to minimize these symptoms, they utilize it as a benefit or a crutch to continue the stigma, you know what I'm saying, that's being shown out there just from our kids just because they consider us not normal. So definitely looking at it from that standpoint, and there are clinicians out there that will definitely document it and say that your child has ADHD when they actually don't, and then when it comes time for it or the actual treatment, you're not really getting the adequate treatment because you've been misdiagnosed or it's really not ADHD.
Right.
But you're getting a check every month,
And I do see assessments come across my desk, not necessarily where I'm working now, but I have seen assessments come across my desk or seeing the kid 3 times in therapy, I completely disagree with the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I'm very quick to write an addendum to the assessment saying,
just add on,
this is how long I've been seeing the
right.
kid, then give my own history, and this is what I see. So, but I think I would just like to summarize the basic idea of what we keep saying over and over is if you see signs of behaviors that you know are kind of off or not right with your kids, whether that's at home or at school, you need to document it. If
Right.
the parents, if the teachers are telling you these things as parents, you need to document that too. Because you want to have your own records, and best believe those teachers, especially in CMS schools, they are documenting like their lives depend on it. They are. And they're very quick to want to call a meeting about what they recommend for your kids. So just be careful about that with CMS schools specifically, because we're here in Charlotte. So I have seen a lot of mess surrounding that and what the kind of pigeonhole they try to put kids in.
Yeah.
So just if you see something different, you need to document it. You need to have your child assessed. If you're not comfortable making that initial call, go to your school social worker, your kid's social worker or counselor at their school, and request that you be referred to a therapist. And they'll refer you for an assessment. And then step 2 after that, well, that's step 3. What's step 3?
I mean, once you get the assessment done, then you follow those, or at least attempt to follow those recommendations from that assessment.
And therapy will probably be the first.
For me, it's always going to be a first, because you can't get all the information that you need within that hour.
Always therapy
or
first.
Or that 2-hour period that you're with that particular client. So definitely, I would go with therapy first, just so I can get more information, if anything.
And keep that in mind, the timeline we gave you of at least 30 to 60 days, and that means consecutive weekly therapy.
Right.
That doesn't mean they see a therapist for twice in 1 month.
Yeah.
And, it just means, let's just say the first 4 to 6 sessions, the clinician should have a very good idea of a recommendation.
Yeah.
And you can ask, hey, what is your recommendation? What have you seen behaviorally while you're sitting in front of my kid? Does anything make you concerned? You need to ask those questions.
And ask them what have they done, because they have a different tier level system as well. What have you done? What accommodations have you made within the school setting? If you notice this about my child in the school setting, what have you done to accommodate some of those things? What redirections and interventions have you utilized?
That's right.
It's not just one-sided. It's definitely, if it's not being seen at home like on a regular basis, but when Johnny get to school, we getting all these things, we got to figure out what the issue is.
Okay.
What the trigger is, what they're seeing, and what have they done, from an academic standpoint, what have you done? And that's a whole nother topic, but I definitely agree that teachers need to be trained on mental health.
Ooh, I have gone into schools and tried to do that.
Yeah, I've done workshops.
Volunteered it. I volunteered it.
Absolutely. So, that's just my spiel today.
That's mine today too. And we wanted to touch on kids and adults, but we go where the flow goes. And today, talking about children and their behaviors in school and what constitutes therapy services, the need for medication management, and anything else was very necessary to talk about today. So I'm glad that we covered that. And I'm glad that we were able to answer some questions.
So we'll definitely hit more on medications from an adult standpoint and the impact of that.
We can do that next week.
Yeah, we can. Unless the spirit takes us somewhere else.
Unless we are otherwise moved. Like my hair. Moved.
Really?
It's moving.
You done?
I am now.
Okay. So, again, we're going to wrap it up, guys, because she's getting out of hand over here.
Well, Damion doesn't feel well, so don't blame it on me. But we're done anyway. I mean, we're about at 7 o'clock. But this is good information. I think you need to like and share this with other people because it's going to help somebody on your timeline. I'm quite sure. It needs to be out there.
I really want someone to kind of comment and say, Jackie, not the 7 o'clock thing. Just, we know. We'll need to wrap it up, music.
I think the time is bothering you more than it is them.
No, I think it bothers you more than it bothers
Well,
us.
I'm a timely person.
We're here.
I'm just a timely person, but you bring this up every week.
And
I thought you missed me, and right now it doesn't really feel like that.
I'm trying to keep the time going because you missed some time last week with me. So
what else do you want to talk about?
I'm trying to get it in.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? We didn't start exactly at 6:00.
No, we got. I mean, I thought we were wrapping up, Dame. You just said we covered it.
See, please wrap it up.
Okay, and I appreciate that.
You know what I mean?
I was wrapping it up for us. There was Saran wrap on the table. Damion put it back in the cupboard.
You and this dog.
I was saying anyway. These are the things that we took away from this week.
Yes.
These are the things that we could potentially cover next week because we didn't touch on them this week.
Right.
But this is the importance of what you need to take away: the therapy, the assessments, and the observations.
Take away medication. That should not be your first go-to. And try, if you can, avoid getting it from your primary care physician. Get to someone that specializes.
Someone who specializes
right.
in medicating children.
Right. Not your primary care doctor that you go for broken legs and asthma.
What?
No.
People are doing that. Y'all are going to your primary care physician saying, I'm going to get his doctor. Well, I hear that. I'm going to get his doctor to prescribe it.
Right.
And I'm thinking, why would you go to a foot doctor for a throat problem?
Exactly. They're general.
Everybody has their own lane.
Yes, absolutely. But again, we'll give. It's a lot of stuff that we try to cram within an hour, and it's very, very hard. Well, what do you say about 2 hours? Could y'all take like 2 hours of the couch? No, I can't because I have a little bit of ADHD.
I can't take it for 2 hours.
It was just a thought.
Okay, well maybe we could work on an hour and 15 minutes.
But if you download the TuneIn app. On Mondays at 2:00, we're definitely there. And they have the music in between, so we have little pauses and things like that. So definitely download that, you guys. Tune in at Power 104.4 FM on Mondays at 2:00.
Or check out the YouTube channel where this episode will be uploaded. How soon?
Within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours.
Yes.
Check out our YouTube channel. It's The Couch 704. Okay? So share the YouTube channel or share this episode, whatever it is. Just share with others. Share. Sharing is caring. Your mental health matters. See you on the couch.
Yes.
Can we talk? What else? These are all the things that you say at the end.
I'm not your average therapist.
I'm not your average therapist.
I like different. Melanated therapist.
Melanated therapist.
Yes, absolutely.
I've never heard you say that. Why does everything have to be melanated? Okay, that's
it.
Thanks for joining us. I was so glad to be back this week on the couch. I missed you guys, and I'll see you next week at 6 p.m. We love you too. Thank you so much for participating in this conversation. It's so important.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you guys for all you guys supporting the couch from when we were actually on the couch.
From we were outside. First we were outside on the bench.
Yeah.
Then we were on the couch. And now we're in the studio.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you
next week. Thank you for tuning in.
Bye.
Peace.
All that good stuff. What's happening with your hand?
I'm throwing up signs. Gang member. No, I'm kidding.
The opinions of Damion Harmon are that of Damion Harmon.